Moen moved forward quickly, while looking very seriously at the road ahead. He didn't want to watch Anne face such a fierce attack alone to protect him. He also didn't want to see Anne die in front of him with his own eyes. Even if you have done something excessive to me, that is still my maid. I can't just watch you die. Besides, when it comes to running away, I am a professional. Moen began to increase his running speed. He had already accumulated some experience in escaping before. Although there were still countless blood arrows chasing him behind him, and some arrows were even close to touching him, he was not afraid of it. He looked ahead with a determined gaze, and decided to avoid all of Aluca's attacks. Moen tightly hugged Anne's body, and moved quickly in the forest, and also tightly hugged Moen's neck to prevent her from accidentally falling off. When the red energy was about to come into contact with Moen, Moen quickly moved to the next position. Moen's figure darted through the forest like a bolt of lightning. The red energy has been closely following Moen, but unfortunately, it always lands not far from Moen. Until now, it has not hit Moen once. At this moment, Moen landed beside a lake and slowly crouched down. He plans to rest here for a while. Ha! 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 He hugged Anne while constantly panting. It seems that running away consumed a lot of his physical strength. In order to avoid the red energy as much as possible, Moen ran at a faster speed than before. Because he was still carrying Anne this time, he had to expend more energy than the previous attempts to escape. Looking at the exhausted Moen now, and couldn't say a word. She was worried whether Moen's body could withstand such high-intensity exercise. She looked up at him and whispered, "Young master." Moen seemed to think that Anne was worried that they would all be caught up by Aluca. He was panting while comforting her. "Don't worry, we'll be safe soon." At this moment, Moen suddenly felt something was wrong behind him. He slightly widened her eyes, feeling surprised. The wind blew some leaves into the air, as if telling Moen that someone was approaching them. Behind Moen, a red light quickly rushed towards him. The ground beneath their feet was also trembling slightly. "Accept my love. I love you." Moen turned his head and looked behind him. As Aluca's voice sounded, countless huge red hands emerged from the ground. It seems that Aluca already knows their location. They twisted irregularly and rushed towards Moen and Anne. Moen looked solemnly at the large hands that were constantly approaching them. He can't continue to rest now. Faced with this situation, he could only think of one solution. He gritted his teeth tightly and said to Anne, "Hold on to me tightly. Don't let go." And seems to know what Moen wants to do next. She looked at him with a nervous expression and asked him, "Wait, young master, do you want to?" Before Anne could finish speaking, Moen tightly hugged her and quickly rushed towards the lake in front of them. He used all his strength to jump into the lake to avoid the attack behind him. Seeing that Moen had jumped into the lake, these red hands also rushed into the lake with Moen. Because their movements were too violent, huge splashes of water appeared on the lake surface. Moen held his breath hard to prevent choking on the lake water. He held Anne in his arms while swimming deep into the lake. He glanced back at the shimmering lake surface. He silently observed the large hands extending towards them. Suddenly, he discovered a secret about these big hands. He silently analyzed in his heart. If I'm not mistaken, that guy's ability, that bastard's body can't maintain cohesion underwater for long. Sure enough, the reactions of these red hands validated his analysis. After entering the lake, these red hands reaching towards Moen and Anne were like they had touched a chemical agent, instantly dissolving in the lake water. They turned into pools of red blood, adding some red to the blue lake water. Due to Moen's focus on studying these red hands just now, he didn't have time to pay attention to Anne's situation. At this moment, he noticed that Anne in his arms had not made any movements. He turned his head and realized that something seemed off with her. Anne had already closed her eyes and opened her mouth slightly, continuously spitting bubbles. As Moen dove into the lake too abruptly and wasn't able to hold her breath in time, she seems to have temporarily lost consciousness due to insufficient oxygen. Moen was very surprised by this. What? Can't Anne swim? He didn't expect that despite her strong ability. She also had things she wasn't good at. Moen closed his eyes and felt helpless about the current situation. Now he can only think of one way to give Anne some oxygen. I didn't expect things to go wrong at this point. Well, all right. Guess there's no helping it then. Moen reached out a hand and hugged Anne's back, slowly approaching her. He gave some of the oxygen in his body to Anne, who had already lost consciousness, through mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. At the same time, Aluca, who had transformed into the form of blood, had arrived at the lake. It found that its large hand that had reached into the lake had already disappeared into the lake. It also did not hear the voices of Moen and Anne. It quickly gathered the remaining blood and reintegrated it into its body. This large pool of blood slowly condensed into the shape of Aluca. It carefully looked into the lake and confirmed that it could no longer find the figures of Moen and Anne. It stood by the lake, staring at the disappearing bloody hands with serious eyes. At this moment, it seems to have noticed something. It spoke slowly. The smell of blood disappeared. Why? My love is so pure. Why don't you accept my love? As Moen and Anne had already fled into the lake to avoid it, Aluca felt very angry about it. Its body was trembling slightly. It lowered its head slightly and tightly embraced itself with both hands. It cannot forgive their behavior. The blood around it keeps boiling under the influence of its emotions, as if expressing its dissatisfaction. Why? Aluca opened her hands and lifted her head, emitting a deafening roar. It cannot accept such a fact. Part of its blood also turned into countless sharp blood arrows due to her anger, and was launched to various places. The surrounding trees and stones were heavily attacked by blood arrows, emitting loud noises. They were all chopped into many wooden blocks and broken stones. Aluca's anger is very aggressive. After venting her inner anger, Aluca slowly calmed down. It tilted its head upwards and looked up at the sky, its hands hanging down weakly. It seems to temporarily stop caring about Moen and Anne, who have already escaped from its sight. It whispered softly, "Never mind, it doesn't matter anymore. It's just the last person left. A sacrifice to the god of love, although I am reluctant to part with it. Wait for me, dear master, and Mr. Moen. When I become a true god, I will make you accept my love." Aluca turned her head and looked towards a certain spot in the sky, revealing a crazy smile. It seems that it will do something very terrifying next.